The first thing people noticed was the silence. At a glittering charity gala in downtown Chicago, silence did not belong. The room was filled with powerful voices, clinking glasses, soft jazz, and polite laughter. But when the glass doors opened and Claire Bennett stepped inside, a strange pause rippled through the crowd just for a heartbeat. She didn't look lost. She didn't look nervous. She looked like someone who had waited a long time to arrive. Across the ballroom, Ethan Walker was mid-speech, smiling as cameras flashed. He was everything people admired. Successful, confident, admired. The kind of man magazines loved to feature. Kind of life others envied. Then his eyes drifted. The smile on his face didn't fade slowly. It vanished instantly. Because standing near the entrance, dressed in calm elegance, was the woman. He once called his wife the woman he left behind 17 years ago. Claire had promised herself she wouldn't feel anything when she saw him again. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Yet as she took a breath and stepped further inside, memories stirred like a storm she thought had passed. 17 years earlier, Claire and Ethan had stood in this same hotel, younger, hopeful, convinced love was enough. They were newly married, living in a modest home outside Milwaukee, building dreams with secondhand furniture and shared laughter. They wanted children. He wanted them badly. At first, the waiting felt normal. Then months passed. Then years. Doctor's appointments became routine. Hope turned into fear. Fear into quiet dread. When the final diagnosis came, Claire felt the world narrow around her. The doctor spoke carefully, kindly, explaining medical terms she barely understood. The meaning was clear enough. Pregnancy would likely never happen. Claire cried alone in her car before telling Ethan. When she finally did, he held her and said they would be okay. And for a while, she believed him. But grief changes people. Ethan became distant in ways that words couldn't explain. He stayed longer at work. He stopped talking about the future. Family gatherings became painful. Every baby shower felt like a reminder of what Claire could not give. Claire suggested adoption. She suggested counseling. She suggested time. Ethan stopped suggesting anything at all. The night he left was quiet. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just a truth spoken gently, which somehow hurt more than cruelty ever could. I want a family, Ethan said, staring at the floor. Think I can have that life with you? Claire didn't beg. She didn't argue. She just nodded, as if accepting something she had feared all along. The divorce was quick, clean, cold. Ethan moved on fast. Claire watched from a distance as he remarried, as his career soared, as his life filled with everything she believed she had failed to provide. She told herself she was fine. She told herself time healed everything. Then she packed her bags and left the city that held too many ghosts. Toronto became her fresh start. She threw herself into work with a nonprofit focused on education and foster care. Helping children gave her purpose without reopening old wounds. Slowly, quietly, she rebuilt herself. She learned how to be whole again. Tonight, she wasn't here for closure. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here because her life no longer revolved around what she lost. Claire moved through the room with steady grace. People glanced at her, unsure why she seemed familiar. She didn't seek attention, but she didn't hide either. Ethan watched her approach, frozen. His mind raced, trying to catch up with reality. He hadn't seen her since the divorce, not once. Not in photos, not by accident. Claire. He said softly, as if saying her name too loudly might break her. She stopped a few steps away and smiled politely. Hello, Ethan. Congratulations on the gala. It looks like a success. Her voice was calm, no bitterness, no tremble. Ethan searched her face for signs of the woman he remembered, the wounded wife, the broken dreamer. But all he saw was confidence, peace. You look well, he said. So do you, Claire replied. An awkward pause settled between them. heavy with unsaid words. Round them, guests continued to talk, unaware that a past life had just collided with the present. Before Ethan could say more, a young voice broke the moment. "Mom!" Claire's face changed instantly. Warmth replaced distance. She turned toward the voice without hesitation. Yes. Ethan followed her gaze and felt his breath catch. A young woman stood nearby, early 20s, confident. Intelligent eyes mirroring Claire's. She was joined by a young man about the same age. And behind them stood an older man, tall, calm, his presence steady. A teenage boy hovered just behind, curious and relaxed. They stood close together, connected. Ethan's heart pounded. Claire gestured gently. "Sorry, I was just finishing up here." She turned back to Ethan. "I think it's time you met. My family." The words hit him harder than any accusation ever could. Family. Ethan looked from one face to the next, his mind scrambling for logic. Claire, the woman he left because she couldn't have children, was standing in front of him, with 4 people who clearly belonged to her. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Claire introduced them calmly, naturally, as if this moment had always been part of her life story. Not dramatic, not cruel. Just honest. Ethan felt exposed, standing under the ballroom lights, realizing that the version of Claire he carried in his mind no longer existed. She wasn't the woman he left behind. She was someone else entirely. And as the soft music played on and the gala continued around them, Ethan sensed something unsettling. This night was no longer about his success. It was about the life he never believed she could have. Few. And he had no idea how deeply it was about to change everything he thought he knew. The moment felt surreal. Ethan Walker, a man used to controlling boardrooms, deals, and every detail of his polished life, suddenly felt powerless. He stood frozen in the Grand Chicago Ballroom, watching Claire Bennett introduce 4 people who clearly belonged to her. The air seemed charged, heavy with revelation, and even the jazz band's soft notes could not fill the silence between them. His mind raced. He tried to speak, tried to form words, but none came out. Family? How? The question burned inside him as his eyes flicked from Claire to each of the 4 faces beside her. They weren't strangers. They weren't borrowed. They were her life, her creation, her love, her home, the very things he had abandoned her. For Claire's smile remained gentle, calm. There was no malice in it, no triumph, only peace. It's the kind of peace that comes from years of surviving heartbreak and building something real. "This is Michael," Claire began, her voice soft but steady. "My husband." Ethan blinked. Michael Harris extended a hand. He was tall, composed, with quiet strength in his eyes. Ethan shook it out of instinct, but he felt a twinge of discomfort. Michael wasn't just a husband. He was a man who had stepped into Claire's life, supporting her, loving her, raising a family. A family that now surrounded her, unshakable, complete. "And these are our children," Claire continued. Ethan's gaze shifted, stunned, as she introduced Emma. A poised young woman in her early 20s with Claire's eyes and her quiet confidence. Noah, a young man with a gentle smile and calm presence, stepped forward. The older man, Michael, stood protectively close, and the youngest, Lucas, a teenage boy, observed Ethan with curious calm. Ethan's chest tightened. Words failed him. The divorce, the years, the belief that Claire had no family of her own, it all came crashing down. The life he had imagined she would never have was now living, breathing, standing right in front of him. "Your family?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly, almost involuntarily. Claire nodded. "Yes, and I think it's important to see something clearly tonight." Her words carried the kind of weight that doesn't need emphasis. Ethan wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain, but he realized that no explanation could undo 17 years of choices. Not now, not ever. Claire's story unfolded gently, like a book opening page by page. After the divorce, she had been devastated, lost in a world that once seemed full of possibilities but had ended abruptly. The pain of infertility had marked her deeply, and yet she refused to let it define her life. She moved to Toronto for a fresh start, focusing on work and service. She became involved with a nonprofit organization that helped children in need, children who had no families, children who reminded her that love is not just biological. It was in action, in kindness, in commitment. Through this, she found purpose. She found strength. And she eventually met Michael, a widower with 2 young children, Emma and Noah. Ethan's mind struggled to catch up. Claire, once the woman he left because of infertility, had not only rebuilt her life, she had created a family. Michael had welcomed her with open arms. Together, they had nurtured love, trust, and connection. And eventually, Claire had a child of her own. Lucas, a miraculous turn of fate, though the story wasn't about that miracle. The story was about the life she had crafted, full and rich, without the man who had abandoned her. The point, Claire said softly, is that life doesn't always go the way we expect. We can lose people, face pain, and yet still create beauty. I did. I built a family, and it's beautiful. Ethan's throat tightened. He remembered nights of bitterness, the long, empty silence in their shared home, the sense of failure he had once blamed on her. And now he faced the truth. He had walked away from a woman who had survived, thrived, built a love and life he could never touch. I never wanted to hurt you, Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I know, Claire replied, her voice calm. Leaving hurt? It hurt deeply. But I learned something you didn't understand back then. Life doesn't stop when someone leaves. You find new paths, you find new love, you grow. You create what is possible, not what you imagined. Michael squeezed Claire's hand, a quiet, steady reminder that she was loved, supported, and safe. Ethan realized that no apology could compete with that bond. The 4 faces before Hema, Noah, Lucas, and Michael, represented a life built with patience, care, and courage. Ethan's eyes softened, but he couldn't look away. The ballroom around them faded into background noise. The applause, the chatter, the cameras, all irrelevant. The only reality was Claire and the life she had nurtured from the fragments of heartbreak he had left behind. Claire glanced at Ethan one last time, her gaze clear, composed, and without regret. She had not come for revenge. She had not come to shame him. She had come to show that a life once broken could be rebuilt stronger than before. That happiness did not depend on one person's choices, one failed marriage, or one lost dream. I didn't come here to humiliate you, she said gently. I came here to show you something, that life moves on, love moves on, and people heal. Ethan nodded slowly. He realized he had underestimated her. Not just her resilience, but her grace. The woman he once abandoned had become someone he couldn't control, someone who had found freedom and joy in ways he could never imagine. As Claire walked away with her family, Ethan's chest felt heavy, yet lighter at the same time. It wasn't anger. It wasn't longing. It was awe, tinged with regret, tinged with humility. He watched her move confidently, surrounded by the people who mattered most. A life complete without him. A love that thrived without his presence. The gala continued around him, filled with laughter, speeches, and applause. But Ethan felt like an outsider in his own world. Claire had shown him a truth he could not ignore. Happiness is built through courage, patience, and the willingness to love fully. Not by holding on to expectations or leaving others behind. For the first time in 17 years, Claire was free. Not just from the pain of the past, but from needing validation from the man who had walked away. She had shown him, man, everyone around, that heartbreak could give birth to resilience. And loss could lead to something extraordinary. Ethan watched her disappear into the crowd, her children's laughter blending with the soft music. Michael's steady presence beside her, and he understood finally, life had given her everything. he thought he was taking from her, and in that moment he realized some losses are irreversible. Some choices cannot be undone, but some stories like Claire's are worth witnessing. And that night, Ethan Walker witnessed the truth he had never expected. The woman he left had not only survived, she had flourished, and nothing could diminish the life she had courageously created. He remained silent, letting her memory linger as the gala's glittering lights reflected on the polished floors. He had lost her once, but this time he would never forget. And Claire, with her four shocking faces at her side, disappeared in two. The warmth of her life, confident, complete, and undeniably victorious.